success of the Ford Mustang, it's no surprise that Mercury got approved for its own version. Taking the name Cougar, it would be the first of a string of Mercurys named for big cats. As expected of Mercury, it was bigger and better equipped than the Mustang it was based on, initially offered only as a coupe. Sharing the same Falcon platform, wheelbase was 3 inches longer than the Mustang at 111, and overall length was nearly 7 inches longer at just over 190. Engines were the same line of V8s as the Mustang, from a 289 cubic inch with 200 to 225 gross horsepower to a 390 with 320 to 335 horsepower. No 6 was offered, but both 3 and 4-speed manuals were offered, and a 3-speed automatic. The 390 was standard on the GT package, which added upgraded suspension, brakes, wheels, tires, and exhaust. A GT with a 4-speed would do 60 in just under 6 seconds and the quarter mile in 14.5. First-year sales exceeded 150,000, and it would be Mercury's first and only car of the year. 1968 would see engine choices shuffle. The 302 V8 with 210 to 230 horsepower would be added as the base engine for the new XR7. A 280 horsepower version of the 390 was added for non-GT models, and a GTE package was added with a 390 horsepower 427, but it was replaced mid-year by a 428, officially rated at only 335 horsepower. The GTE could do 60 in under 6 seconds and the quarter mile in under 15, when properly equipped. For 1969, there was minor styling updates that included a side swoop, and the base engine was now a 250 horsepower 351 Windsor. The 390 was reduced to just the 320 horsepower version, and a convertible was added. The Eliminator package replaced both the GT and the GTE packages, and was essentially used for all performance packages of the Cougar, and came with a standard 290 horsepower 351 Windsor. The Cougar version of the Boss 302 and Boss 429 were called the Eliminator, as was the Hertz Rent-A-Racer version. The equivalent of the Mustang Mach 1 appearance package was the Eliminator Decor package, which included hood scoop, stripes, wing, air dam, and competition colors. Even so, less than 2,300 Eliminators, including 100 Hertz versions, were sold each year. 1970 saw updated front and rear styling, as well as a designer series with houndstooth top and interior. But by this point, Cougar sales had dropped below 80,000. An enlarged restyle arrived for 1971. Still based on the Falcon platform, it was 3 inches wider and had a 112-inch wheelbase and was 197 inches long. The new styling was supposed to help move it more towards a luxury coupe. Trim levels were once again base, XR7, and GT. At 3,900 pounds, the top 370 horsepower 429 cubic inch version still did 60 in 6 seconds and the quarter mile in the mid-14s, but sales were down to about 60,000. 1972 saw the move to net horsepower ratings, and engine choices were reduced to 351 cubic inch variants, ranging from a 164 horsepower Windsor base model to a 266 horsepower Cobra Jet. The Cobra Jet doing a 6.5 second 0 to 60 and a 15-second quarter mile. Power brakes became standard for 1973, and it gained a revised front end with 5-mile-an-hour bumpers, adding 3 more inches of length. For 1974, the Cougar made a more serious attempt to compete with the Chevy Monte Carlo and Pontiac Grand Prix, and was moved to Ford's midsize format with a 114-inch wheelbase. No longer related to the now smaller Mustang, Ford got its own version of the new Cougar called the Torino Elite, and sales were back up to 90,000. The 351 Windsor remained the base engine, and the optional 351 Cobra Jet remained. It was joined by an 170 horsepower 400 cubic inch V8 and a 220 horsepower 460 cubic inch V8. That would be the top engine going forward. After the 1977 restyle, the XR7 carried on in the segment, while the Cougar name replaced the Montego for all other mid-size cars, including sedans and wagons. Meanwhile, Ford's new version took on the Thunderbird name, significantly down market from the previous Thunderbird, while other Torinos became LTD2s. Base engine was now an 130 horsepower 5-liter 302 cubic inch V8, and the 460 was discontinued, but the 351 and 400 carried on. The XR7 would account for 166,000 of the 213,000 Cougars sold in 1978. For 1980, the Cougar XR7 and Thunderbird became a box body like the Mustang. Engine choices were limited to 115 horsepower 4.2-liter V8 and an 130 horsepower 5-liter V8. 5-liter XR7 Sport did 60 in 11 seconds and the quarter mile in 18, and Cougar sales once again dropped below 60,000. The other mid-size cars followed to the Fox body the next year, still called a Cougar at Mercury, and now the Granada at Ford. Available with Ford's 2.3-liter 4-cylinder and a 3.3-liter 200 cubic inch straight 6, as well as the 4.2-liter V8. Bringing Cougar sales back up over 90,000. And although the XR7 didn't get the 4-cylinder, it did get the 6. And for 1982, it was joined by a 3.8-liter V6, and the 5-liter was discontinued. This really didn't seem to be working out all that well for Mercury, and some restructuring at Ford for 1983 helped fix it. The existing Ford LTD Victoria and Mercury Marquis became the Ford Crown Victoria and Mercury Grand Marquis. Restyled Fox body mid-size sedans became the new Ford LTD Victoria and Mercury Marquis, and a new aerodynamic Cougar and Thunderbird were introduced. Styling was similar, but the Cougar got a more formal roofline. To start, engines were the 112 horsepower 3.8-liter V6 and the return of the 5-liter V8, now with fuel injection, still 130 horsepower, but half a second quicker than the previous 5-liter car. The XR7 package returned for 1984, using a 145 horsepower 2.3-liter turbo 4-cylinder, bringing 60 under 9 seconds and the quarter mile under 17. Sales would start at around 75,000, but it was only a coupe again, and sales would go up from there. The V8 got up to 150 horsepower for 1986, but it still wasn't quite as quick as the Turbo 4, and sales were up to 135,000 by this point. 1987 got an anniversary edition with gold trim, Mustang wheels, and the V8. The XR7 would also switch to the V8 for that year, which got 5 more horsepower for 1988. For 1989, it was an all-new car, still the same thing as a Thunderbird, but now they were on their own platform. The 3.8-liter V6 would be the only engine to start with, in base 140 horsepower form, or a supercharged 210 horsepower version. The supercharged XR7 was good for a 7.5 second 0 to 60 and a quarter mile in the high 15s. First year sales were just under 100,000. The high output 5-liter V8 returned for 1991 to replace the supercharged V6 with 200 horsepower and a slower 17-second quarter mile. For 1994, Ford's modular 4.6-liter V8 replaced the classic 5-liter V8. Output was rated at 205 horsepower, but the quarter mile was back into the low 16s. By 1996, sales had dropped below 40,000, and the Cougar was killed off in 1997, only to be revived in 1999. Originally intended as the third-generation Ford Probe, it instead took on the Cougar name. Unlike the Probe's Mazda platform, the Cougar was essentially a coupe version of Ford's Mondeo, or Ford Contour and Mercury Mystique in the U.S. All this meaning it was now competing as a front-wheel drive sports compact, or econo-sport, or sub-GT, or whatever term you want to use for a kinda sporty small coupe. Engines were 125 horsepower 2-liter 4 or an 170 horsepower 2.5-liter V6. the V6 5-speed doing 60 in just under 8 seconds, and the quarter mile in under 17. There were several special trim packages, including XR, SE, and C2, but no real performance package. And although first-year sales neared 90,000, they dropped quickly, and the Cougar was once again killed off in 2002, with fewer than 20,000 made that year. Over its roughly 35 years, the Cougar competed in 3 different coupe segments and as a mid-size family sedan and wagon, although briefly, with varying degrees of success. But as a Mercury, it is perhaps their most successful model ever. As always, thanks for watching. Don't forget to comment below and like and subscribe.